Thank you all for coming, and welcome to our warrant committee meeting first warrant committee meeting for the month of April. Our agenda requires us to have just a few items this evening, so I'm happy to call the meeting to order. And I believe all of you have received electronically the minutes of our last meeting. Do we have any discussion on those minutes? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Any discussion on that? Second? Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Accepted. Next order of business is consideration of any remaining items on the town warrant report, which the chair also wishes to thank all the members of the committee and Town Administrator Mike and Amy Dexter and Katie Conlon for that matter, for the chairwoman of the Board of Selectmen for the help that and the proofreading and all the other things that go into the process, which honestly, as a neophyte at this, I did not realize was anywhere near as involved as it is. So thank you all for your participation and your thoughtfulness in putting it together. And as far as I know, everything went off on schedule. Mike, you got everything you needed and everybody's happy. Terrific. Okay, so if there are no outstanding issues left on the 2018 town meeting warrant, we can proceed to the next agenda item, which is the request that we received for the vote on the reserve fund transfer from Article 42 of last year's warrant in the amount of $397,445 related to the Hendry's project. Hello, Erin. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. So we have both Mike Dennehy and Katie representing the town to talk a little bit about this. So and former Chief Wells also here. So I will turn it over to you to describe the request.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate you having us here tonight. I'm joined by Selectwoman Conlon and Selectman Wells. We just had a meeting upstairs with Chair Burns, at which point the board authorized a reserve fund transfer to cover the costs associated with the demolition of the structure formerly known as the Hendry's Building. In 2015, money was put into the town meeting warrant in the amount of $397,445. It was carried subsequently to 2016 and 2017. What we're asking this board to do is this committee is to approve that those funds to be put in an account in the Selectman's office. What we will do is tomorrow we will be signing our force account agreement with the T. They're asking for $200,000 of that to be put in a force account agreement, at which point those funds will be drawn down as needed by the Mass Bay Transportation Authority as a part of any costs related to the diversion and demolition of said building.
Do we have a copy of that letter?
We do. Oh, the force account agreement?
Yes.
No, I can get you that tomorrow when it's signed. It's still in draft. Town council had 2 more comments today. There's a definition of a word that we were looking for.
What specifically does that govern, Mike?
These funds?
The the force agreement with the T.
So the town is the proponent of the force account agreement with the T.
Okay.
There's a variety of groups involved with the T, the power group, the bus group. There's 7 or 8 groups, the structural engineering group. So it's the costs involved in the demolition of the Hendry's Building and diversion of the trolley line. So we anticipate a successful pre-construction meeting tomorrow, establishment of the force account agreement if these funds are made available by this committee. And people in that neighborhood should see activity later this week, a series of events to close down the sidewalk on Central Avenue and Elliott Street, as well as the deployment of some equipment to do the pre-demolition work inside the building while we wait for Memorial Day weekend. This construction company, demolition company, will be working outside the 50-foot buffer zone for that 5-week period, bringing down necessary parts of the building, and then
They close off the trolley line for a bit of this, do they?
they will in Phase 2, which is Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
So Phase 1, which is that first 5-week period, we envision the work starting next Monday, April 9th. The first week's worth of work is probably just pulling stuff from the building and not necessarily pulling down the building. The next 3 to 4 weeks is actually pulling everything outside of the 50-foot buffer zone down. having that stuff trucked out, and then the last piece is the diversion, this demolition work taking place before that, is necessary to get ready to get access for the excavating equipment to pull that wall down. Hey.
Hey, Clinton. Do we have any questions for Mike? Please,
So-
Steve.
Okay.
Steve was first. I'm sorry, Tom.
It's okay. So the 200 seems firm for the force account. What's the other 197 going to cover?
If it's needed,
Okay.
right? So we're asking a reserve fund transfer tonight for all of it, in case the 200 is spent and we need more money. That way we don't have to come back to you and ask for the rest.
Okay, so if it all moves there, but you don't need it, then where does it go? Is it just going to flow to unexpended and free cash for next year?
Yeah.
Which is where it derived from in 2015.
Yeah.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, kind of along the lines, yeah, of, what is the money gonna be used for? And I guess we don't have a definitive, I don't feel real comfortable doing that. I mean, it's not the way that reserve fund transfers happen. I mean, I know this went in, originally this money went in there in the event that we'd have to tear down
The town.
the building,
Yeah,
the town's
the town.
portion of it, because we couldn't come, we were having trouble coming to an agreement with the Conleys. That agreement's been signed, the Conleys are gonna pay for the entire demolition, and the only cost to the town, I shouldn't say the only cost, but the cost to the town will be the diversion, the T diversion. But like any other reserve transfer, usually we have a bill in hand and an amount specific, and that's what I feel comfortable with.
I don't think the T works like that, though. It's just not how they function. So the T, it's just not how they function. So they're gonna require, they give you an estimate, which, and there's some of the estimates they wanted to give were much higher, and I have to give the town administrator a lot of credit to working that number down, because the numbers that they were presenting here a few months ago were
In the
much higher.
700s.
Yeah, it's over $250,000 to do this.
So you said you
Did they itemize what those were, those
They
costs,
do, yeah.
Mike?
So there's a cost associated with each day's piece of work. And again, it's an estimate. We got that $773,000 down to $413,000. So in the force account agreement, they're asking for 200 grand, but their estimate is 413. So there's,
would
Which may
feel
come down, and,
comfortable having
it
that building,
includes, we
right.
should point out too, the cost for, this is all related to the diversion, but it includes removing all the catenary lines that are attached to the Henry's building. It includes flag people and other inspectors who are gonna be on site while the process is taking place. And some of those inspectors are gonna be on site during the pre-diversion period, which is going to help us minimize the length of the actual diversion itself to a shorter period of time. So, the town administrator, as Richard said, has been doing a lot of work with the MBTA, had a lot of meetings and discussions with them, and this is where we're at. The ballpark is closer to a little bit over the amount that we're requesting, which is the amount that's in the reserve fund as a set-aside by prior agreement with prior warrant committees for this purpose, but they're looking to fund the account initially with 200, but we're gonna have to pay, probably on short notice, additional amounts if it becomes necessary. So rather than having to come back and having the actual process be stalled because we don't have the money in the account to pay it, we're asking for the full amount now. In either event, whether it transfers into the selectmen's budget or whether it stays in the reserve fund, it's gonna flow into free cash next year regardless, either way.
Maggie?
I have two questions, though. If you have the estimate, I don't know why you didn't share it with us. I'm very uncomfortable approving 200 just to go without seeing a bill, just like Tom said. The second thing, if you have the additional money in there, you don't have to stall. You still have to come before us and have that reserve fund additional money transferred.
Yeah, we're making the
Approved.
request for the whole thing now.
Right, so can I answer that, just so we're clear, Maggie? Again, this is by prior agreement of town meeting, which in 3 or 4 successive years approved this money, free cash, for being rolled forward in multiple years for the specific purpose of the Henry's building. It was put in for demolition when we thought we were going to have to demolish our piece of the property. What we're responsible for under the agreement we negotiated with the owner of the larger portion of the building is that the town would pay the diversion cost for the MBTA. We know that's a big number. We're not talking about something that's a definitive bill at the start of the project. There's a lot of factors. As how the construction goes, not the construction, the demolition goes, that may impact how much we ultimately owe. So
not
it's a
disagreeing
movable
with that.
number. But the numbers are built into the force agreement, which is still being negotiated.
I'm not disagreeing with the end to the means, I'm just disagreeing with the way that you're coming without giving us even the estimate that you had. If this was your business, would you personally have someone just say, write me a blank check for 200, where's the bill? I mean, I've never paid anything without seeing something in front of me, whether it's an estimate or not. And is there a not-to-exceed number in this amount? If it goes over that 397, is the town still responsible? Or does the developer ever kick in?
We're responsible for the diversion cost. So, yes, that was negotiated.
Right.
I guess what bothers me a little bit, and because the agreement was signed when I was on the board, obviously. But, you know, I wasn't really involved with the negotiations. Did we ever get an estimate before on the size of this?
We did. The building
Bill?
commissioner, Joe Prondak, did get an estimate a few years ago, and it's higher than what was estimated by the MBTA at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the entire cost of this, just seems huge, and that is bothersome to me. It
It
just
seemed that to me when it was $700,000, and I'm much more
Yeah.
comfortable with it at
Seven-
Yeah,
$400,000.
that would make a $2 million project
Exactly
out of
right,
this whole
exactly
thing.
right.
And that was
$2 million
that was-
not to
That was
have
the
affordable
MBTA,
housing.
including 5 or 6 flagmen, 5 or 6 inspectors, so there was a lot that was negotiated.
Kevin, you had a question.
He's going to defer to the new girl.
Oh, please, I'm sorry, thank you.
So I just want to say, having worked in state government for a long time, this amount of money is peanuts. If we're actually able to do this, and I know that that sounds crazy coming from the new person sitting here, but if the estimate's at 413 as the max, and they're only asking for what, 237?
200.
200. I mean, the MBTA and everything that could go wrong with this whole thing, and the busing, and the protests, and anything, let's say that we get a crazy protest and we need to bus everybody in, that's gonna be added money, this is a great estimate.
But we're gonna have to pay for all of those extras.
We are,
So
and
this
let's
is like a
hope to
no
God that we don't have a
estimate.
protest that weekend.
So it's really a no estimate.
But it is, because they're starting from a place that's a lot less than, from what I can gather in my short term here on the warrant committee, would even be a normal estimate. I mean, the fact that they're not coming in here looking for $500,000, to me, is a deal. But that's my opinion, having worked in state government, and we deal with billions. So, obviously, it's a little bit different. So I'm just trying to let folks know that
But it probably will go up.
So,
That's-
my question was around, we're being asked as the warrant committee, 2018, to just approve a prior warrant committee
And town meeting,
decision.
and town meeting decision.
And town meeting decision. So, I mean, what's really our authority to deny the approval?
I don't
I mean,
think anybody's
so
talking about
I guess,
denying.
I guess,
I just.
Or-
I want to hear
would
what
just-
Kevin has to say.
or, I mean, it's kind of just procedurally to move along. I mean, we can't deny, or we can, the prior approval by the prior warrant committees. Or we could amend, we could adjust. I'm asking the question, because it really procedurally, somebody's already kind of, prior warrant committee already said yes.
Well, the town meeting said yes.
And the town meeting.
The meeting said yes and voted it. The question is the allocation and the reserve and approving the movement of the funds. And I think we're fulfilling a fiduciary at this point, 3 years post factum of the initial transfer, the initial approval, to make sure that the transfer is done in a responsible fashion. And I think these questions are certainly germane to doing that, and I think they're totally appropriate. There are two issues that I see, and one of them has to do with the nature of the transfer and making sure that what we transfer is going to go to precisely what the intent of the town meeting was, and I think that's okay. The second is the integrity of the state and the state agencies, which, quite frankly, in the last week of the newspaper reports having to do with everything from Massport to the state police have shaken my confidence in the ability. I didn't even go there, but the question is the state responsible and are the state agencies responsible for adequately and properly taking the taxpayers' funds and using them responsibly. And I'm afraid, being a credulous, simple sort, that I'm not completely convinced that happens. So therefore, my question, very simply, is how do we have controls on the T coming back and saying, we need a little more here? And I don't know that we have the protections in place, and I don't know that was contemplated initially when this was made. So there's the question that I have, because that's, I think, coming to the if I can coalesce all the points of view, that's kind of sort of what we're getting at right now. I don't think we're disputing that the money has to go at some point, but it's how is it going to be capped so we don't have this open-ended liability for something that is
I
otherwise.
just want to comment, I have faith in the gentleman sitting to my left.
I have faith in him too.
I mean, he's done, but as far as, and I talk about this from an operational perspective, this is a gentleman who comes with a great operational background himself, came from the city of Boston, has intricate working knowledge with the individuals in these, and you could say that about anything, any project, anyone
Absolutely.
can let them, you could say that about anything, but I don't
We're
think.
talking about this one now, and so the question I have is there any control on that money?
Yeah, to make it clear, there's absolutely no question about his attending and his capabilities and experience and how he's gonna oversee this. I think the question is gonna be on the state's end. And, are we paying up front? They're gonna just take the money and then there's gonna be no,
So propose what as an alternative?
timeline on when they do
Well,
this.
there's the question.
I mean, are we gonna just, so we're gonna come every time you get the bill, we're gonna come meet? I mean, that's,
That's that's the
Yeah.
alternative.
I won't be here.
Yeah, well,
okay.
no, that's the
I'll just-
alternative, because if we have to do this in piecemeal, well, that's why we're here now, to see.
The risk you run there is every time you go piecemeal, you stop the operation, you stop the
Understood.
operation.
And then the cost
system's
goes
still
up.
shut
Right,
down,
right. The cost
the
goes
meter's
up.
gonna continue to run,
Oh, I
it's
get
gonna
it.
cost you even more.
I think we
But
would
what's
have
gonna
been more
stop
comfortable if
keep
we had an
coming back and
example of
back and
the
back? What's the
estimate that you
timetable
received.
and-
If we just saw that estimate,
Well, they have a
you'd
timetable
answer
all the
all of
time.
our questions.
So, Mike, here's the
A
question.
couple of things, yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
My question, I go
So
back to
two
the
things.
initial-
The negotiation and the discussion with the T have been ongoing since September in my realm.
Right.
They do a very conservative estimate, right? At first, they wanted 5 flagmen out there. We got them down to 1 flagman and 1 inspector. So if you can understand operationally in that first 5-week period, which our demo company and the developer, or the developer's demo company thinks is going to take 3 weeks, but just to err on the side of caution, the T made it 5 weeks, right? So there's built-in conservatism in that estimate. The demo company and the developer want this building down as safely and quickly as possible. The T wants this building down as safely and quickly as possible. So in that negotiations is some very conservative estimates. That 5-week period, the demo company thinks they can do in 3 weeks. The diversion period, which the T is estimating at 6 or 7 days, could be done in 3 to 5 days. So there are built-in conservative numbers just in case. I will say that they've been very forthcoming with us. We had the open dialogue back and forth, what we thought would happen. If you can understand the first 3 or 5 week period, there's an inspector on site for the T, and if he sees anything structurally wrong during any point in that pre-demo work, he'll notify the flagmen, and the trolley will stop 100 feet away, or however the T does that. I had anticipated on the force account agreement being finished Friday. Town council had a couple of questions with the liability issue that the town would face, and added some language to that. The T got back to me today and said they were going to run it through their mill. We hope to have that signed tomorrow. I will provide it to everyone on this committee. At that point, it'll become a public record anyhow. There's, the estimate is 413, and they're asking for 200,000. It's in the force account agreement, it just hasn't been signed by both parties.
Chris, I saw you first.
Sort of 2 questions. The first is, let's say we say no today until you get back with an actual formal draft of an agreement. What would happen? What does this mean?
The T will not do anything until $200,000 is put into
So we
the
won't even see a formal
Force
draft
account.
from the T. We'll be in the same position a week from now, is
Correct.
the point. Okay. My second question is,
That
hypothetically.
doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah, so notwithstanding, and I'd be interested in Tom's perspective on that, but hypothetically, if you went back to the T and said, the warrant committee is being stingy, can you bring the price down? Hypothetically,
I think I know the answer.
Yeah, no.
The 413 number, the number that's in there? Yeah, and again, like Mr. Wells said, Selectman Wells said, there's any contract, things, you have to put a number down, right?
understand.
The fact that they're asking for 200 and the estimate's 413, but to answer your question, it could go up.
Oh, I was thinking the other way
Because I can tell
around.
you, the board's been pretty stingy on this already.
Right.
That
Sure.
We've helped, and
I don't doubt
that
that.
has helped get the.
I don't doubt that. And obviously, I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I appreciate that.
We could have come with a whole
Second
700. We could just brought up with the initial estimate and said we need $700,000.
You had a second question, or is that?
Those are my two.
Okay, Tom?
So, you're not gonna deposit the $200,000 into the force account fund until you have an agreement that both sides agree on.
Correct.
So.
So if we don't agree with
so-
that, there is no force account agreement.
Right,
Correct.
right. So, and, I mean, I have no problem, if there is a force account agreement signed to have the committee fund it, the 200,000, because that's the money that's being asked for really right now. But I would prefer on the balance of it to, again, as it becomes needed, if there's 200,000 in that force account, I suspect it's just gonna keep getting funded as it runs low. And
I don't see what's wrong with that.
I don't know, there's nothing wrong with that, but when it runs low, come back again. That's all I'm saying. If, I would prefer to have it in the reserve fund if it's not needed, rather than move to another fund. That's where it was parked.
I guess, a question, in the agreement that's being negotiated, or what contingencies are there to help prevent overruns and delays for part of the T?
It's,
None really.
yeah, it's a demolition,
But I mean, if
Things
they
come up.
have one where they, oh, sorry, we can't get our inspector out for a week,
Yeah.
or he's out, so the only one you could possibly do is, whatever reason, just spitball, like, if there's delays.
So I've never worked on a force account agreement
Yeah.
myself in my capacity. Chase Berkeley has. In the T, it's normal operations.
Yeah,
They do force account agreements all the time.
yes.
I don't think they run into those problems of staffing people.
Yeah, I just meant any,
Right.
for whatever reason, there's delays or something, that there's a ballpark time frame of what you're saying, like, they estimated 5
Yeah, but
weeks.
I would
If
assume
it
there'd be
starts
an
going into 8 weeks, 9
interruption.
weeks,
I would say that,
there's some
if
sort
they
of
can't fill a
penalty
spot,
for
there's
that.
an interruption in service, and if there's no one there, we're not paying for it, right?
Yeah, say they can't hit the Memorial Day, and then they have to leave it to Labor Day.
I don't think they want to do that.
No, they don't want
do that.
to. Nobody would want to, but if it turns out that way,
They're not going to do that.
Well,
And I would suggest
I
to
mean,
each
they
of
didn't
you,
want the trains to break down over the winter and things either, but they don't want it. I'm just saying, if it happens that way, and there's delays, is there anything in there that's
you mean if
gonna
this train is
motivate
shut down
them?
because they run, and the only reason they're not running is because we don't have enough money in to continue to pay to keep the project going?
No,
Is that what you?
if there's things on the part
Aaron,
of
do you
the
have a
team
question?
where there's
Yeah, I do
actually. Go ahead.
delays, that there's some sort of contingency in there to help motivate them to keep onto a timetable.
One is the pressure to run that service. They want to run that line every day.
So I have a different question,
So no,
since
there
I
isn't.
wasn't here for the other
Can I just respond
conversation.
before the different questions
Okay,
to
go ahead,
Doug's?
please.
Doug, I think we gotta keep in mind here, the Connolly's demolition contractor is on a tight schedule, and, he's got other projects to do. The demolition contractor's looking to come in here, get this job done, and then move on to what they have next. So
Yes.
they've got a time frame. The T does not, they don't want to shut, they want the building down, but they don't want to shut the trolley line down. So they're gonna do it, they're gonna shut it down for the minimum amount that's required for public safety, and put reattach the lines, take the lines down, do the work they need for prep, and then to restore the service and test the service. But really, the schedule is being driven by the demolition company and what they perceive as the period. Now, as Mike said, it's been a conservative estimate. The developer thinks that this demolition can take place in a shorter period of time than 5 weeks, which means a reduced cost for us in terms of the diversion costs. But any number of factors can arise, as you point out, but
Yes.
everybody, once we get into the actual diversion, the week when we assume it's gonna be a week when the trolley's shut down, that work is gonna be going 24/7 at that point in time. So there's a lot that's been built into this schedule, and as the town administrator said, these have been meetings that have been going on for a very long period of time with the MBTA, with the demolition contractor, with town representatives, which has included the building commissioner, who's gonna be, on the site every day, checking out how this is going. Mr. Dennehy, I'm sure, is gonna be down every day at the site, watching how this is proceeding. So we have a lot of safeguards built in. you know, the Board of Selectmen is the ultimate fiduciary, has the ultimate fiduciary responsibility here to the voters and to the taxpayers for these funds. So we're going to be doing our role of oversight to make sure that this is proceeding as efficiently as possible and on schedule as much as possible. We know anything can happen, and there's always that risk, but I think there's a lot of safeguards built in here.
But ultimately, you can't hold the T if they're just not doing it or inefficiencies on their end, is my point. Was there
So
something that?
That's an
leads
uncontrollable
directly
anyway.
into my
Yeah.
question. So you already, I'm assuming, have an understanding of what is currently damaged on that track line, so that we will not be responsible for anything that is currently damaged prior to the demolition. It's just like renting a car. If I'm gonna rent a car, they're gonna walk around the car, they're gonna take a good look at that car, they're gonna mark down everything. If there's anything, I'm assuming that all of you walked that track.
And again tomorrow.
All of you, no, that's a question, all of you walked that track?
No, we have not walked,
So
I don't
who's
think we could
walked
say
the
we walked the
track?
track. We've
So-
been to the site, but we haven't
Well,
walked
I've been to the
track.
site too, but I mean, somebody needs to actually.
but I mean, we've
You
been-
walked the track, thank you.
Yeah.
And you have made sure that the T is not going to say, oh, now look, there's this whole section of track that's
We have a
magically
laundry
broken.
list of things to talk about tomorrow.
Okay, so this is all gonna be part of the negotiation. So you're asking us to put something up in front without knowing exactly what the negotiation outcome's gonna be.
No, not necessarily. That's already built into the force account agreement, which hasn't been signed yet.
And it won't be signed, and it can't be signed until the warrant committee puts the money into the account, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
We
Thank you.
cannot start work next Monday if the force account isn't funded.
That's very important. Thank you.
At the 200 level?
Yes.
So I guess I'm
Maggie,
confused,
your-
maybe you guys can help me understand this. So you have an
Sorry.
estimate that you've worked, and you're happy about the 200,000 that they've,
With more
do they expect you to just give them 200 without a signed contract? Wouldn't there be something simple with the
That's the force account agreement.
saying, upon acceptance of signing this contract and upon a deposit of 200,000 that you guys have come together, and there's the agreement? I mean, they must have something in writing for you to agree to in order to give them the 200,000 now. Am I missing something?
They can't share it with us.
They'll be done simultaneously. The agreement will be signed and the funds will be provided to the MBTA
They can't share it with us prior.
as contemporaneously as possible.
Why?
Sure, can I raise a question?
I don't know, but that's
You
what
have
I'm
another
getting.
question?
Can I move the question?
You can move the question.
I mean, this is just an overreach in my mind. I mean, we don't review teacher contracts, we don't review police, I mean, what, are we gonna review the force account agreement? I mean, this is getting,
No,
Question is-
that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the
See
point.
their estimates of
The point is,
increases and 2% increases. We do see some numbers when we look at teacher contracts and things. We don't just,
Actually, we see a lot of numbers.
Yes.
yeah,
We
exactly.
see a lot,
do
we see
some
all the
things.
numbers, quite honestly, so I don't know
You
that
see
I
some
would
estimates
dispute
and
that. We
things.
see a lot of numbers. The differential here is that we don't see the negotiation and the agreements prior to.
Right.
Yes.
Here, we have a situation where the funds have already been allocated, and the question is up to us as the, I guess, audit function rather than fiduciary, overseeing how the funds are transferred is the question, and that's where we come in. I think the issue is, do we transfer, if I can distill this down, do we transfer the complete 397 as the request has come in, or do we say 200,000 and then the 197 at some point that we designate? That's the only way I can see breaking it down.
Yeah, and I was gonna offer up similar solution in that the 200 goes first, and then the 197 comes in with additional information. We'll see the agreement from my colleagues who
And we
want
appreciate
to
that you're
see the
looking at the
agreement.
convenience
I mean,
factor for the
that
convenience
moves
of
it
the committee, et
forward.
cetera, et cetera.
so,
But Tom,
let me put, there is no such thing as a set-aside within the reserve fund.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. This is not set aside because you can't, okay? It was a gentleman's agreement, and I think we should certainly abide by that gentleman's agreement, that the 397 was parked in the reserve fund because there was no other place to park it at the time. And that's what it was put there for. But there is nothing binding this committee to spending 397 on the T, because legally, it couldn't be done.
right. I understand
Just a
that.
Yeah.
parliamentary inquiry here, just really quick. You guys don't earmark this stuff out?
The reserve fund is
Not,
one,
it's just a general slush
the
fund?
reserve fund
Just
is a
making sure.
general slush fund,
Okay.
yes.
I'm just making sure I
Exactly
get my
right.
facts right.
For
Okay.
lack of a better
Slush is a
term.
bad
Right.
word, but
I know, but it's the general
Katie.
fund.
Could I make an additional
Please,
point?
please.
We're we're coming to you as the chief elected and the chief executive board of this town that has the primary responsibility for the Henry's building, to oversee that what's been agreed to between the private developer and the town is done according to schedule and is done as efficiently as we can. And, ultimately, we're the ones who are accountable to the voters on this. And what we're telling you is, we know we're gonna have 200,000 up front. We have an estimate that's over the 397,000. We expect we're gonna be spending more than $200,000 on this project. We don't wanna have a delay. We've had a lot of delays already. This has taken an awfully long time to get to this point. I mean, we all know it's been years, but this year alone, it has taken many months to go through this process with the MBTA. So what we're asking you as the Finance Committee of the town is to transfer the full amount to the chief elected and the chief executive board of this town, which will be responsible. We're not going to have 50,000 of this money, if we don't need it, go to pay somebody's salary or go to take on some additional expense that nobody was anticipating. I don't know if there's a way we could transfer any of it back to the reserve fund, if that might be the preference at the end of the process. When we're still in the current fiscal year, we could look into that, if that's possible. I don't know that it is, but we certainly would be responsible for the funds, and we'd be making sure that they're spent for the appropriate reasons. And what we don't want to have is a problem where, we might have to come into you on fairly short notice and say, we need the money for next week, and we have a problem getting a quorum of the warrant committee. I mean, there was only a bare quorum tonight at the very beginning of the meeting. Anything can happen, so, that's why we're asking for the full amount now. We reasonably anticipate that it's going to go over $200,000, and it would eliminate the need for us to come back here to another. And one other thing I'd like to remind you of, our board is going to be changing in another month, and we have, our chair is very busy and was not able to be here for this part of it. We met with him upstairs tonight, but our schedules are this time of year, especially with all the different events going on for the candidates and all the different meetings that we have to go to, we may run into a problem where we're logistically, or where we can't meet to make a supplemental request, or maybe you might not have a quorum. So we want to avoid that happening, because this is such an important project for the town. We really need to get this done right, and we're hoping that you'll give us the full amount, because we think we're going to need more than $200,000.
Steve?
So, I do not disagree with what you're saying, Katie, but if the thing just comes in at the estimate, that's already above the 397, so you're gonna have to come in again anyway. This committee will meet at town meeting. When does this project kick off?
Memorial Day weekend. Well,
Phase
but it's
two.
starting,
Phase two, right, but.
some of it is starting next week.
So we'll have some idea of where things are by the time town meeting comes around, so it's certainly not difficult to expect there'll be a quorum of this committee the first week of May, or even in the second week of May, depending on how long things take. The putting the money in the force account to set things up, that makes all the sense in the world to me.
I agree.
The additional money's available as needed. It could be 197, it could be 327, we don't know until we know. So, the whole, if the warrant committee needs to get together to do this, the warrant committee will get together to do this. We'll just say, hey, this is an important thing that needs to happen, and let's get it done. But there are all the evenings of town meeting to get that done easily.
John, you've had a request for Doug. One more.
Yeah, I just want to say, it's like, we recognize that this has been a very long time, and that you put, especially this particular board, has put in a lot of hard work, and Mr. Denny also, to get this done. And we don't all want it over. It's been over 10 years, I mean, ultimately. So we don't want any needless delays. We're not trying to stall, but I think we're trying to take our responsibility of an audit and financial oversight very seriously, and we haven't even seen the estimate. I mean, I'm not asking to see the agreement, especially unsigned, but I would have liked to have seen the estimate of the cost, at least to see where the T's coming up with on one end, 700,000, and then why they're gonna settle for 200,000. Just to see what's going into it and what needs to, rather than,
They didn't settle for
Take
two,
it.
they settled for four.
Two's the down payment.
Two's the
yes,
down payment.
and then that's just it, is like, see what's going to be involved in this, just to have an idea. I have no idea of all these things.
Well, going back to exactly what you had said, what you had asked, and it's a credit to especially to my colleague who's done way more hours than anyone I know
Yeah.
on this project. But Mr. Denny, who is shrewd enough, as well as our Joe Pronick, our in Special Services, to know exactly what we're gonna need here, and to keep those costs to a minimum.
Yes,
As I said,
but as
when I
part of
first
our
saw this,
oversight, we need to know what those costs are too.
well, he's still in the
And
final,
the
he's still in the final part of that,
Of the agreement, but he has an estimate from the T.
right?
So
Even if it's preliminary, we can at least see that.
So the preliminary work that is going to take place will commence when the $200,000 is set up. The majority of that money is going to be during the diversion weeks, although I appreciate Mr. McCurdy's recommendation that town meeting, you can authorize more of that money. We won't be at that point yet. There's a very minimal amount, and the idea was to pull a lot of the stuff and the 50-foot buffer zone down while the train was not being diverted, because the burden of the cost is during that diversion period, which won't start until May 25th. So we will not get close to touching that $200,000 prior to town meeting. The meeting,
Which again kind of makes the point of, let's get the 200,000 in it. If you're not going to spend the rest of it
this
before the
board's
town
probably
meeting.
going to have to meet in the middle of diversion, which is going to stop the diversion.
Can I ask
That's all I have
another
to say.
parliamentary question? Is there a reason why we cannot set it up so that any extra money is automatically reverted back into our general fund?
It's gonna happen, anyway, it's gonna go back to free
Hold on,
cash.
I'm
It goes
asking
into
the
free-
chairman
It
that
goes
question,
into
sir.
free cash.
It goes into free
It
cash.
goes into free cash, then it flows back that way. We really can't move what is taken out back into the same fund.
So you don't have that
We
ability
don't
to
have
do
that
that?
flexibility. That does not
Okay,
exist.
so is that something that maybe we should put on somebody's docket somewhere about how to, maybe in the future, think about this can be a little bit
It's
easier?
a statutory issue.
And I don't think Mass DOR would allow
Right, the
that.
Department of Revenue governs these transfers, and they like to see everything,
I know
you know how
are.
it works. They like to
And
see everything following the statutes that
So
govern.
if somebody in the general public was given an estimate of, let's say, make it simple, 500,000, right? And so you put $500,000 into account,
Right.
and that account was to draw down, right? And so just like, I'm retaining an attorney.
Right.
Okay? And that draws down. If there's money left over after I'm done with my settlement, what happens to that money? Wouldn't it just be simpler if it would be reverted back?
I'm not disagreeing, yes, it would
Okay.
be. Yes, it absolutely would be.
Because I don't want to, I'm with this guy, I don't even know what his name is, but I'm not coming back in every couple weeks to vote on
He shaved his beard.
more things. Thank you so much, I'm new again. But it seems like we're kind of apples and oranging here. So we get 200,000, I got an email saying 397,445,
Right.
which is what I thought I was coming here to vote on.
Right.
Yes.
So now we're talking about two, so I'm a little bit going, what are we doing here, Mr. Chairman?
I understand.
Thank you so much.
I mean, as a point, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that's important to people, if it doesn't get spent, then the committee can convene and roll it direct back into the reserve fund at a later date.
We can
Out
do
of free
that?
cash.
I don't think we can move it
I'm not
back.
sure.
That's what I'm
We
concerned
just-
I'm not sure
about,
that he
I'm not
can.
sure
It
either.
expires and then goes to free
This is an atypical
cash.
request for reserve fund transfer, which usually something occurs and there's a cost to it, and then
Initial
that
needs
cost
and-
is transferred.
Thank
And you gotta,
This is a presumptive, this is what we think it's gonna cost, so we wanna
Right, but
reserve
DOR
that
doesn't
amount of
get.
money.
Based on what's already been appropriated.
No.
Right.
Based on what has already been appropriated for this project.
Designated, but not appropriated,
Yeah.
designated by the town meeting. There is a distinction.
Fair enough.
The reserve fund is specifically entrusted to the warrant committee.
I got that.
Statutorily,
I got that part.
it's the only thing that the warrant committee is in fact in charge of and must, so, and the other standard that's put on it is, in order to transfer money out of the reserve fund, it has to be for an extraordinary and unforeseen circumstance.
Understand.
Budget overrun could be that, that we had these funds, and clearly, this is one of those cases too, sure. I guess I would have one other question, though. Do we have any kind of contingency plan if it goes beyond the 397 substantially? Because it's not coming out of the reserve fund beyond the 397 to any great degree, there's not enough money in there, typically. I mean, I don't know what this year's gonna look like, but I don't know what the legal, what the legal bills look like and how much those things are gonna wind up being overrun or other things. So the likelihood that you're gonna get substantially more than 397 out of the reserve fund is probably not that great. So are there contingency plans if it goes beyond 397? Where's the money come from?
well, probably the selectmen's budget, because we have an unfilled position in that budget, so, we could transfer it at the end of the year from salary to general expenses, and there probably will be some money left in the reserve fund. Could I ask one question, just understand the committee's intent, mainly to Mr. McCurdy's point? What would you be looking for us, if we were to come back to you at some point in May, again, as the town administrator said, before the large expenditure has been made, what would you be looking for from us at that point?
Firmed up number, I guess.
But the MBTA is not going to have that if it's sometime in May, because the biggest piece of this will not have been expended yet.
But until Mike just said that, I didn't know what the sequence was.
Okay,
So
I
that was
see.
part of the question. So when the 200 is depleted, they stop unless there's more money in
No, when they
there?
get to $20,000, they'll notify us they need more. 20 is their
Okay.
threshold.
And
And will it
then,
be brought up to 200 again, or will it
Well,
be-
that's for this board. No, they know we have 397, 445 in there, right? That's-
Okay.
But my question to this
didn't, they
board
do
is, and I
now.
don't know if I made myself perfectly clear, it could happen during 24/7 operations that they have to stop, right? If they tell us on the Friday that they're running out of money, right? This committee will not be in session.
But we can give the chair that authority too.
what happens when they hit 397?
Yeah.
That's the next item. on the agenda.
That's the question that Tom asked.
Right, so
Close that.
they're not gonna stop.
Well, they
They're not
could.
gonna
They could.
stop. They're
You
gonna
hope
finish
they
the
wouldn't,
job
but-
and they're gonna.
Yeah, again, I
settle
haven't
out.
worked with an MDT force account agreement, but.
Okay, I think we have listened to several, one more point, and then we're going to go.
No, I just have a question. First of all, I just want to make a comment. We know you guys are doing your job. I mean, we know you have the town's best interest at heart. I think everyone's somewhat leery about these public authorities, people put in for hours that they don't work. Who's looking out from our part of the town to make sure the flag holders were there 8 hours instead of 2 hours, or didn't show up, or they don't put more? I think we're more concerned about that end. Are they going to, are they going to be giving you progress reports? Are they going to be giving you billings to let you know how much money has been used? Do you have any of that in your agreement, so we're not surprised at the end of the month saying we're out? Are they going to be showing you percentage of completion, all of that type of thing as the project's going along? I think that would be a very good tool to be able to know that information instead
Sure.
of.
As that money is drawn out of the account, we'll get updates from it. Again, kind of put the cart in front of the horse, trying to get here today to get the force account set up before the agreement was signed. I think if you saw the agreement in front of you, you'd see everything that the town council's been working on with the T, especially if you saw the first draft of what was discussed, then $773,000 is now $413, and again, I don't want to repeat myself, the demo company thinks they can do it in 3 weeks, not 5, and 3 days, not 7. So it's very conservative, but I
Well, what about
understand your
checking
point.
to make sure what they're submitting is correct on hours and people that are working? Is anyone from our side going to be kind of keeping an eye on that?
They're legally bound to supply those documents to us. We're the proponent. There's a contract in place, there's an agreement.
Could I make a motion?
Please.
So I would move that the board approve a $200,000 request for a reserve fund transfer
Yes.
to the Board of Selectmen for the MBTA force account contingent upon the successful negotiation and signing of that account.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I have a motion on the table to transfer $200,000 from the reserve account specifically for the force account that's being negotiated.
Contingent upon successful negotiation.
Could we modify the
You need a
motion to
second before,
include?
you need a
We need a
second.
second. We need a
You need a
second
second.
before-
If you have any questions.
It's the motion's been second, discussion.
Can we modify
You
that
can
to?
pose a friendly amendment.
include-
Yeah.
There's no such
Amendment
thing as
to
friendly amendments,
include, can we amend that to include, if necessary, the chair can authorize up to another 197?
I think we do it under separate, but yeah, I would.
I'm just saying, to prevent their doomsday
Having to be
scenario of
delayed.
everything shuts down because we can't get together, if necessary, the chair can authorize additional money up to the total.
I'll accept that amendment.
So we
I
have
mean,
an
we
amendment.
should
We have a-
ideally
we
meet
need a
together,
second to
but
the
if
amendment.
necessary.
It's still part of
We
this.
have a second to the amendment, though.
Roger's rules is rolling in his grave right now.
Of course it
Well,
is.
he's dead. That
But we have an amendment to the motion right now. The motion's
Actually,
been
we
seconded.
do allow friendly amendments.
There's
And,
no such thing according to actual
well,
handbook.
historically, this committee has allowed.
And now there's
as-
other people on here, and so I thought we were following rules, so to me,
It's been just a long, you know,
Accretion.
the person making the motion has to agree to the friend, otherwise you've got to just vote up or down the motion.
Well, discussion.
You've accepted it.
I've accepted it, yes.
Okay. So the amendment is to authorize $200,000 for the transfer from the reserve fund for the force agreement yet to be negotiated, contingent upon successful negotiation of the force agreement, and authorizing the chair to approve the transfer on behalf of the committee for the additional $197,445,
If necessary.
if necessary. Is everybody agreeable? Is that how we, okay, so there's the motion. We have a second to that motion, the amended motion. Or do we need a second to
I
the
don't think you
amended
need
motion?
one. No, you
Okay.
seconded it.
If
Well,
that's
it's
the
friendly,
case,
so you know everything's fine.
So if I want to amend the friendly amendment, is this when I speak? I don't want to go
we're
out
having
of-
discussion on
Okay.
that. So that's the
my
amendment as it
discussion is
stands.
everything that was said, contingent upon the chairperson also notifying the rest of the committee with the information and letting
That
us
he's
know about it.
reviewed whatever Mike is
So we can
providing.
just have a copy of what's going on, so we know.
We can provide that?
Okay.
Okay. Contingent upon successful review of all available information related to the transaction.
In a parliamentary inquiry, is this an amendment to the original ask, which is what was received by the warrant committee via email?
Yes, we can consider that.
Is that what this is?
Effectively, yes.
Okay, just asking.
Fine. It's good. Okay, so the motion stands, and we've had it seconded. All in favor? Or is there any more discussion? Any more
Further
discussion?
Yep.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
so,
go ahead,
I mean, I just feel like, for the committee, I think it's an overreach, right? In terms of trying to
Belt and
control
suspenders?
the process of whether the 200 gets spent or the 397 gets spent, because I think we all probably feel that somewhere between 200 and the 397 will be spent, and the likelihood is that we'll be back here looking at plus 397, more so than closer to 200. So, and we're being asked to just approve the release of the funds for a prior warrant committee approval that was 3 years ago, right? So for us to, kind of say, gee, we'll give you 200, but come back and see us when you need, 201 or 197, it's either, all or nothing.
No, I
just
understand-
feel
I
like it's
understand the
quite-
point.
I agree with Kevin's remarks.
I understand the point. I
But we're
understand the
not
point.
doing that, because he's going to
But the
do
issue
it.
is, but I think the issue goes a little further than that too, because these decisions were made 3 years ago. That was 3 years ago. The facts have changed a little bit, and the reality is that whatever we vote to go out of the reserve fund isn't going to go back into the reserve fund if there's anything left over. So I think this is the control that we here in 2018.
But we have no, there's no mechanism, there wasn't one back then.
Right.
There isn't one now for the money to revert back. So, if there was, I think we'd all be in a better, feel better
If
about
there
it.
were, exactly right, but there
But
isn't.
since there isn't, it's either all or nothing. And the idea that we're controlling spending 201 to 397 is kind of a
But I
reach
do
for
understand the
us.
contingency that's been placed on this is up to 197,445. If it's anything less than that, it doesn't go out, in which case we don't have to worry about having it
Right.
filter through and then come back with free cash.
But you would
I
have to
understand
approve
that point.
anything over $200,000, correct?
I have to prove up to 197,445 if we approve that tonight.
Additional.
Additional,
Right.
right. We're all approving the 200 now,
Right.
which serves the purpose of what we need. Ultimately, it's going to go. I have a feeling it's going to go. This is just an additional incremental step,
And more.
and I'm perfectly happy to do that on
Well,
behalf of the
concerns we
committee if
haven't seen
it makes some of you
necessary.
more comfortable.
There was no magic to 397, 446. There was going to be a massive expense, and there was money available to supplement toward that, whatever it was gonna
Are
be.
you talking about when this was initially discussed?
When it was here.
This is where institutional memory comes in
So,
handily.
you know,
Okay.
there was no, we think this is what it's gonna cost, let's put, it was, who knows what this is
we
gonna
had at the
cost.
time.
Let's
Yeah,
put
that
some
was-
money
Listen,
aside.
I am very sensitive to all the points that have been made. They're all valid. Nobody wants to see money
Wasn't it basically
needlessly
demolition costs for
transferred
town?
We-
out.
we got an estimate on
That isn't going to find its way back.
It'll
But
find its way
it-
back,
It
yeah.
will,
We're gonna
perhaps.
spend all this plus, so.
Perhaps, right. But if there is any way that it isn't going to happen, I think, given, as I said earlier, the kind of egregious expenses we've seen at some state agencies, I understand the hesitance to giving everything that has been allocated all at once to an agency which has a history of misspending, let's say. Anyway,
That's, you're allocating it to.
but the
if you're not
selectmen
allocating
ultimately
it to
have the
team.
responsibility for
Right, and
overseeing
he's
that.
supposed to negotiate.
Right, and I
Yeah,
have confidence
I
in his
just-
negotiation, but this is
It's also the costs after
a
negotiation that happens that we can't foresee is what we're trying to
Exactly.
This is a
ask for
step,
contingencies. and
this
things
is a
that we-
control
it's
step,
not
and that's
any
how I look
reflection
at
on your
it.
negotiation.
So anyway, we have a motion, it has been seconded, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain.
Have you got all that?
Yeah.
That was a pretty close vote.
It is a very close vote, but it passes.
Let's count, we got one abstain.
Yeah,
We
do
can
we-
count if you like.
One.
No,
Okay.
you don't have to.
We can if you
No,
like.
I
Then
I
it'll be
actually
even.
am, I would like some clarification. So how many folks do we need for a quorum? Is that
Eight.
Madam-
We need 8. We have 8.
Eight.
8 is a quorum, and we have 10.
Okay, and does the secretary also vote?
No,
No.
So you
Secretary
need
does not
five.
vote.
secretary does
Thank
not
you.
vote. So we had 3 against and an abstention, and 5 in favor, and the chair did not vote, but if the chair voted, he would vote in favor.
Motion passes.
Okay, that's as I said, motion passes.
Thank
very
you,
much.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one more item.
10 minutes.
Well, it should have been 10 minutes, but
That's what I was like, throwing laundry in, this could go
That
forever.
makes sense.
it could, but we don't let it go forever. I've always told you, after an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Don't worry about getting together. I
Okay,
get
so
it.
So we-
following that
we
discussion, and I
saw
think we already exhausted a lot of the discussion points on that, is the question that was put to me by the town administrator: should the town warrant committee delegate the chairman to approve transfers when it is not in session? And so here's the question that I asked earlier. This has been done in the past, and I don't want the responsibility without limits being placed on it. I wouldn't want the responsibility without limits or conditions being placed on it. So we can open this up for
The
discussion.
question, is this for expenditure, any expenditures or the one we've related?
It would be for the
Just
3% transfers that are statutory or for other
Any
things.
just-
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I don't want that
Well,
responsibility.
for
As
other
chair, I
things too,
don't.
anything emergency.
Well, when we're not in session, I mean, theoretically, during the summer, if we have 1 or 2 meetings, that's a lot.
Yes.
But things do come up in the summer, and,
Especially this year with Henry's.
well, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
I don't like it.
Me
And I would say that I don't have the institutional memory that others do, so you'll have to pardon my naivete. I don't like it. Having said that, I wonder if there is a way to provide for it to be a contingent power. That is to say, it's defined by some emergency when the warrant committee cannot otherwise meet, even though there's been an attempt to do so. In other words, not absolute, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Best efforts,
caveated,
right.
so to speak.
Best
To
efforts
your
to hold the
point.
meeting.
I'm sorry.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I feel, even though it was approved last year with maybe up to 60 or 50 or 60, other previous committees have not approved it. I feel it's our responsibility as a committee to not allow that power between, we like him, we love him, we trust him, between one person and one other person. It's about doing a
What's about the control process, and
control
this is a
and
control.
being what
We
we're
are the control,
supposed
like
to
it or
do
not.
to be able to
Kevin
approve
had a
it.
question as well.
No, that's
Does?
Well, I think this can be a healthy balance, like the one we
Yes.
just compromised.
Yeah.
Because there are gonna be
Yes,
examples when we just, something needs to get done.
Right.
And we can't all come together and debate it. And
I agree.
However, we do still need proper financial oversight. in
What about
which
if
I
it's
think the
regarding
other-
Most of these are gonna happen in June.
Yes.
Yes. And I think
Most of
we
them
did-
are gonna happen in June.
Okay.
I think we did have a good compromise that we just voted on, so I think can be able to come up where we authorize you
Yes.
for a
X
certain
amount
period
of
of time,
dollars.
a certain amount of dollars.
Excluding Henry's, I think if we go over that amount, that's something we all need to
Well, because
be
it's already
involved
been
with.
authorized.
We've authorized it up to
we just authorized him to
197,445.
No, we
allocate
did.
$200,000.
Not that, we're talking about when it goes over budget, as we probably all know
Probably
it
will.
will.
Well, then
Yes.
why don't we just vote for the whole thing to begin with?
No, over that
It goes through
397.
That's what I'm
We did.
saying.
Well, the
Well,
reason to the
we-
last
see
debate
what
is
I'm
because we
saying?
didn't have any
Thank
sort of oversight. We didn't even get the estimate to
Right.
see what's happening, and
The
we
reason we
want to
didn't
just
do it is
turn
we
over
like to
everything
sign
all at
contracts.
once.
Can I please ask for order?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody for what I'm about to say, but it is very frustrating to have everybody talk over each other all the time.
Right.
I cannot hear what any single person is saying.
Still have a quorum, by the way.
Yep.
I don't know if this is something we want to vote on tonight. It's something I think that we have to think about, particularly given the discussion that we had. I'm comfortable not voting on it tonight, but I think this is something we should think about. And then bring it up for consideration at a later meeting. If there are going to be expenses in the month of June, historically there have been, then we do have to have some mechanism in place.
Well, they definitely will be, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
if that's the case, we should think about some mechanism. So I would suggest that we just leave it at that point. Think about what sort of controls we'd want to have, or what sort of polling that we can legally have within the committee to do this. I don't know if we can do it, bless you, electronically or over the, I don't know how we can do that. Have a remote meeting if we need it. We have had people in. I don't know what mechanism exists, if any.
Is there, Mr. Chairman, is there precedent of other
Bless
committees
you.
allocating this within, and I believe I heard you say this, Maggie, and again, excuse my naivety, the words, fancy words. Anyway, is there a precedent for other committees that allow their chairman to vote in extreme circumstances?
To vote or to?
To have
Have the authority to approve.
Yes.
Right. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so this is not out of the blue, what is being asked of this committee right now?
And it's been done in the
I-
past, too.
I just didn't know.
Yes, it's been done.
Board
in
of
the past.
Selectmen do it, they get the chair, at the same authority, reserve fund and 3% transfers, every year.
And the reserve fund is for unanticipated things. It's not just someone can come along and say, George, give us some extra money. There has to be,
Other than that.
and it has been the custom of the committee to, at town meeting, usually at the very latest, just say, okay, we're concluded with our business, some of these transfers are gonna come up, the 3% transfers are gonna come up, and then we deputize or designate the chair to take care of that up to a dollar level, and if it's a bigger thing,
Right.
then you say, okay, well, maybe we should
Committee.
get together and discuss what that is and whether it truly is an emergency or not.
Thank you.
Okay.
But, most of the stuff is gonna be, fairly routine. And the money, if there's any of the 397 that's not needed, that would stay in that account and be available for other stuff that could come up. So it does make sense to, portion that as it's needed. And if they blow through 397 and hit the 413, they're gonna need more
have to
money
come
than
back to
that
us.
anyway,
Yeah,
so.
I just have a
Go ahead.
question for Steve. So in that regard, would you be comfortable, as we're just talking about it, allowing, if Henry's goes over, which we probably know will, 397, allowing that to be done, because it's probably going to be something that's unforeseen or something emergency, or do you think that's something the whole committee, do
The
you
whole
put a
committee.
number on that
No,
as
no,
well?
The whole committee should decide, and it should be some significant number above the 397, not
No, I know that,
$3,000.
right.
But if it's, $500,000 in total, that it's, not 397 or 413,
Right.
it's 5 or 550,
Yeah.
then absolutely.
We just had a big ordeal to not let them go between 200 and 397. Why would we vote to go over 397 with the unilateral authority? That's,
Are you asking me?
yeah, that makes absolutely no sense.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about if something happens over the summer we're going to allow the chairperson, like we did last year, Lee Michael was allowed to approve X amount of, up to 60, without us meeting. So the question just become, we're just expanding upon it. We're gonna come up with a number for him to be able to approve, we'll be voting on. Do we want also, if he's going to be able to approve up to 50, should he be approving an additional 50 on Henry's? Should there be a number that he can do without us meeting? I think that's sort of what we're talking about. Henry's will be different than the other approvals, because it's a different type of situation.
Chris?
Can I offer ahead of, or at the next meeting, I will propose specific language that we can then address with how this will be authorized. And I would suggest if anybody
I
has
second
That's a very good
that.
idea.
similar kind of language.
If you can
please
come up
bring
with
it.
the language, we'll put it on the agenda. I
That's
do
great.
not know if we'll have another meeting before our May 7th. We have to convene before the town meeting on May 7th, so maybe we can bring that up at that point.
I would be
Have that
fine with that,
discussion.
sure.
Okay, so I think if that's the case, then we'll move the question forward and consider it at that time. As I say, do not believe we will need to have a meeting before our May 7th meeting at Milton High School, because we have to be in session for the town meeting to convene. So I think that will be fine. And as we've exhausted those agenda items, we have any new business anybody wants to bring up?
To your point, the House Ways and Means budget and then the Senate budgets will be out, and those numbers are not necessarily going to be the same as the governor's. So if there's more or less local aid, we will have to meet ahead of that and adjust all those budgets.
Good point. Okay, all right. We'll have to stay tuned on that then. So,
You'll only have the House budget at that point.
Yeah, you won't have
House
this,
budget will
yeah,
be
you won't have the
The
conference,
House budget will be done, but you won't even have the first draft of the
the
Senate budget.
Senate, no,
by May
Yeah,
have we figured that out? we're working on it now. Brian and I are doing, but we're putting that together. Actually, we're getting together next week to discuss that.
Good.
So we'll be ready for that. So anyway, hearing no new business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.